we'll go ahead and welcome Mario Martinez Jr., the CEO and founder of Vengreso, to the session here. Mario, thanks so much for doing this. Welcome to SMM Connect.
Gary, thank you for having me, my friend. And I think now everybody can probably see my video, which is now they see the video. Okay, I was asking everybody, can you see the video? But it was because you were speaking, Gary, that individuals couldn't see. So excited to be here with all of you guys, and thank you for having Vengreso here. This has been an interesting situation, an interesting time, no doubt. And everybody who's on this call has been probably plagued with, oh my gosh, how do I convert my sales training program that I'm either doing internally or with the training partners that you may have into a virtual environment? Fortunate for Vengreso, we were already 100% virtual and digital company. And so our training programs were actually already built online anyways. So this has actually been kind of our expertise where people have been calling us and saying, how did you do it? What's the best way? And our brilliant CMO, Mr. Bernie Borges, who's behind the scenes here on chat, if I'm not mistaken, said, I got an idea. Let's bring this topic out to the marketplace. So we hope that's going to be a benefit to you. So I'm going to actually click my slides, and I just want to make sure if someone can give me in the chat that they can see the click, and it's, there we go. Did it move? Are we seeing movement?
Mario. Yep.
Fantastic. So what's on the agenda today? There are three things. I said three things. Look at that. I held up four fingers. I actually meant three things. Three things that we're going to cover today. What ineffective sales training looks like from a virtual and live in-person perspective. Three techniques to improve long-term memory for the sellers that be part of the program. And benefits of virtual instructor-led training and how you can actually create a program that's going to stick. And the most important thing is change behavior. Change behavior. So you'll be with me for the next 60 minutes. And we are also going to do some Q&A as well. So don't worry. Throw those questions into, I think we're going to say the chat. If you've got questions there, absolutely ask them, and we will try to answer them. Along with, we've got a Q&A session at the end. So let me tell you a little bit about Vengreso so you understand who we are. We are absolutely the world's largest modern sales training company, and I'm proud of that name that we call ourselves. It all began as a direct result of me sitting in the seat as a VP of sales, launching a digital sales training program to a 120 U.S. domestic sales organization and 350 global. And this was both social and video. Now, this was LinkedIn's then, and as far as we know, as of 6 months ago, most successful story of an enterprise deployment that they'd ever done in their enterprise history. Why? It was because we were able to accomplish two things. The first thing was 100% rep adoption, meaning 100% of our reps were able to leverage the tool and technology, and we didn't have to make anybody work to do it. They just started doing it, and it was a result of the program that we're going to talk about today. And number two, 100% of our reps were able to attribute one sales opportunity to the open pipeline, closed won, or closed lost. So that landed me an opportunity in October 2015 to actually be invited by LinkedIn to speak at their annual users conference. And if you look at actually what a brand equity would look like going into one of the world's largest social media annual users conference, it was a straight line just like this. The moment I spoke for 48 minutes by myself on their stage, it did that. And 3 months later, I went out on my own and I started competing against some of the other greats that were out there in launching digital sales training programs. And then I came up with this crazy idea and I said, man, I don't want to just make this a small little niche organization. I want to go big. And so I started dialing and calling up Kurt Shaver, Vivica Von Rosen, Bernie Borges, and saying, I've got this idea. Instead of competing against each other, what if we all join forces and form the largest digital sales training company? So that's a little bit about our story. We've got Kurt Shaver, Vivica Von Rosen, and Bernie Borges, who are my fellow co-founders here at Vengreso, and each of them are respective influencers in the categories as you see here. Under content is Bernie. Social media, you probably know Vivica's name for LinkedIn, and then also another fellow sales influencer, Kurt Shaver. So we came together and we brought all of our IP together, and we took all of our in-person training programs and content plays and how to go approaching the market, and we created a scalable, duplicatable, replicatable program that is now delivered VILT strategy for over a year plus now in the organization. So I want to take a poll here and ask everybody in the audience whether or not have you been forced to create a virtual sales training program in the last 90 days. And there's 4 answers on the board, and I want you to go ahead and put your answers in. Either yes, we built it from scratch, yes, we're still trying to build it right now, or no, we already had a virtual sales training program, or you haven't built it yet and you're not going to make a vote. So VILT, by the way, is virtual instructor-led training. Virtual instructor-led training. So let's take a look at that. We're getting some answers in. We've got, wow, I'm really surprised. Majority of folks here with a lot of participants from around the globe are sitting in. I don't know how long we should keep this poll going. Gary, am I going to tell you how long to keep it going?
On mute there. No, you can go ahead right now.
All right, so do I hit end the poll, or you're going to end it for me?
I'll end it for you.
You got it. Perfect. So the answer, and we're going to broadcast that to you as well, the answer is 45% of you are still trying to build this right now. Thus, one of the reasons why you're here. 25% said you're trying to build it from scratch, and 30% that you've already had one. So now the question is, for those that have already had one, how do you make it more effective? Those that are trying to build it, this show is for you. Let's keep on going now in terms of the next slide. So a little bit about our program. Just on one program alone, just one program, we spent 3,932 man hours on developing our virtual instructor-led training program. Now, I'm not trying to tell you this for any other reason other than we put a buttload of hours into this program. And it was with design, it was with science, it was with intent. And everything that I'm going to talk about today is all pertaining to this science that we went into putting this program together. And our customer satisfaction rates, our program, you cannot get your certificate and actually show completion and graduate until you fill in our surveys. And our surveys are sitting at a 95% met, exceeded, or far exceeded happiness score in our training program. And that's with thousands of individuals that have gone through the program. So I hope what you're going to get from that is we think we know what we're talking about here, and I hope you get some value out of this. All right, I want to throw up another poll. Do you feel you have an effective virtual sales training program? Answers on the board are totally ineffective, ineffective, somewhat effective, effective, totally effective, or the answer, I can't see that. I don't have one. You don't have a program at all. So let's take a look and see what everybody thinks they have going on right now. Totally ineffective. Thank you for being honest. That's awesome. We've got somewhat effective, majority of folks sitting there. Effective, and you don't have one. Wow, okay. So almost all of you, go ahead and end that poll there, and we'll display that to the audience. The answer is resoundingly, majority of you feel that you have a somewhat effective program. And the rest of you, you don't have one, so 34%. And then it falls into both sides of the camp. So no one really feels like they've got it down to a science. Thus, the reason why you're here. Let's keep on going, and I'm going to take you through now a couple of things about traditional sales training and virtual sales training. Now, I am of the opinion, and I differ from many sales training organizations around the globe, some of the big ones, and some of the biggest sales training organizations are actually our customers as well. They've come to us and they purchase training from us. First off, I believe that in most cases, in-person sales training is totally ineffective. Why? Because most people are doing training in a 1-day or 2-day training session. I don't know about you, but pretty much most of the reps in my 22-year career, when they went through a sales training program, And traditional sales training is in person. That's an in-person sales training program. That's a great question. So an in-person sales training is usually what we think of as traditional. When they've gone through that program, most of them said, this is phenomenal. I loved it. This was great. And that was day 2. They walk out. Next day, they're back to the same old thing. And that is one of the reasons why training keeps happening over and over and over and over again, because we have not changed behavior, because most people forget. Statistically proven, 70% of B2B reps forget the information they learned within a week of in-person training. All right? What about after a month? Guess what? It gets worse. 87% of B2B sales reps forget what they learned. And this is even with reinforced coaching and training. Reinforced coaching and training. A lot of folks say, oh, we've got in-person, then we're going to follow it up with virtual coaching. Well, guess what? Most sales training programs rely on the sales manager to do a lot of that reinforcement. Our experience is most sales managers are in the exact same boat as a sales rep, and they've forgotten most of it as well, and they go right back to their old habits and what's worked. So this is if you think about what has happened as a result of COVID, it's actually, in my opinion, a blessing in disguise for all of you who are out there thinking, how do I go about creating a program that actually sticks, that actually changes behavior? And that's the whole point of virtual sales training. So let's talk about the idea behind in-person, traditional, versus virtual. Guess what? 80% of the information that you will teach through a virtual program, if done over at least 60 plus days, which is called using the spacing effect, and we'll talk about that in a second, will be retained. That is why you should be thinking about your sales training program not just being a virtual program for 4 hours a week, whatever it might be. Think about looking at it as an enablement track. As an enablement track, you're looking at a minimum of 2, maximum of about 3 months. 2 to 3 months on a prospecting, on converting, on whatever it might be, whatever the topic is. Think about training that over the course of time. In addition to that, what you'll also see is that when using video, and there's some science behind this, and we'll actually showcase to you some data behind that, that 65% of the information is actually retained after 3 days when taught using video. And that, it's a very easy reason why. Very easy reason why this might be the case. It's because when I can see the video, I have a visual effect plus actual audible that I can now imprint into my memory. And when I'm doing it on my own, I get to pause, start, pause, start, pause, start. And now I can rewind, fast forward, and I can learn it at the rate at which I want to learn. And that is why it has become this virtual instructor-led training. Don't think of it as something that's bad. Think of it as something that's actually really, really good, that will allow you to be able to have a better impact on the sales organization. So this is called the forgetting curve. In the late 1800s, a German psychologist coined what is known as the forgetting curve. And what is it? Well, he found that if new information is not applied, people forget about 75% of what they learned after just 6 days. Okay? And it goes all the way down to after 31 days. If they're not applying it, then about 21%. So this is actually the study. It's called the forgetting curve. And this is why I'm showing this data, so to encourage you to not think myopically about your sales training program, rather to think much more broader on a 2-month or 3-month long program. And doing it over spacing effect, chunking it with different phases, modules, those types of things. And I'll take you through the secret formula that we, Vengreso, have created our program, which has created these really dramatic results for our sales teams that we train specifically. So understand that sellers are very busy. And in most cases, we have what's called the squirrel problem. Look, a squirrel. Look, another squirrel. That's our problem. Most sellers have that particular issue. So we've got to be able to give them the bite-sized pieces of information over the course of time, and it has to have a a formulaic approach to being able to help a learner learn. So we'll get into that in just a little bit. I want to first throw up another poll, and the poll is, how many days on average do you think it takes humans to make new habits automatic? Is it 4 days, 27 days, 33 days, 66 days, or 112? You vote. How many days on average does it take humans to make new habits automatic? The poll's coming through. We've got about 56% of you, 53% of you saying 27, 29% saying about 33 days, 14% saying 66, 3% saying 112. All right, one last, 1, 2, 3, end that poll. And the results show that most of you believe that it's 27 days. The other big number is 33 days. And a small swath is 14% at 66 days, and 112 days was 3%. All right. The answer, let me move on to the next screen here. The answer is the average number of days to be able to change behavior and form a new habit is 66 days. So you've heard me now say at least 4 times, how long should a sales training enablement program generally be if you're trying to teach a new skill, change behavior within a sales organization? That's right. So I said you should be looking at least 2, if not 3 months for an enablement program. So now there are some things that are pretty easy and basic, like, we're not talking about tactical skills. We're actually talking about the amount of time that it takes to form these new habits. And someone asked for the source. Actually, Bernie will look that up. It's in one of our slides. We can't see the notes on the slide, but there is a source for that for the average number of days to make a new habit automatic. So it's approximately 66 days, and that's why we want to be thinking about how to create a program that lasts over the course of time, and which is why this whole COVID-19, as horrible of a situation as it is from a pandemic perspective, it is squarely hitting you all in the eyes and saying, you have to think about how to create behavior change. And congratulations, now you'll be forced to think through exactly how humans learn and throw away that garbage 1-2 day training program that nobody usually ends up learning from. And of course, there are other ways to be able to reinforce that through coaching and this, that, and the other. And there's some programs that are out there that are good. But generally speaking, virtual instructor-led will be able to reach the mass. It'll allow you to be able to change behavior. And we want to be thinking about these types of things. First off, some facts, how people learn. Short-term human memory is limited to about 7 items of information. I don't know about you, but in a 1 to 2 day training program, even when we Vengreso did it ourselves 2 years ago, we had way more than 7. Way more than 7 in terms of being able to consume information and practical points. Retention rates are even lower when the information is delivered verbally instead of visually. So oftentimes we had this inside of it. Does this sound familiar? You show up to a class, there's 30 people in a hotel room, and there's a trainer in the front. We all have manuals on our desk, and we sit there and we talk for 8 hours with a couple slides here and there, and then we do some exercises together at the board, and we whiteboard or we write on those white pieces of Post-it note paper, right? The problem is that most people want to be able to see and hear at the same time to learn best. That is why there is a formula of in the universities across the globe at how students should learn, okay? And we'll go into that in the solution in just a second. It takes time and repetition to turn sales training into new habits. And this is really where I want you focused at, is how am I going to change behavior? Ultimately, when you're producing a virtual instructor-led training program, you got to be thinking about how am I going to change behavior? And this is where the coaching and reinforcement comes in. This is where sales management and leadership buy-in comes in. All of these elements you want to be thinking about. And ultimately, the end goal, the end game is, did I change habits, and does it have a positive effect on whatever it is that you're trying to solve for, whether that be more sales conversations or meetings, whether it be turning more deals into close one deals, whatever the skill set is that you're trying to change, you got to measure that from an ROI perspective. So I always thought about this when I was a leader as a VP of sales, and I thought, man, I just sat here for 2 days or 3 days sometimes in a training program. We just did all these workshops and exercises and group learning, and we were like, yeah, this is great, this is good, high five, walk out, we're like, oh, that was the best training ever. And then we get right back into the office on Monday morning the next day, and we start doing deep dives into our deals and opportunities. And then we're sitting there, we're like, wait, what did they tell us about? What should I, just go and do what we normally do. And that's the challenge that we have with sales training, is that the seller can't remember. And if salespeople can't remember the training that they went through, how then can they apply it? And this is that practical application, getting involved and actually doing and actually going through it, and that process. So let me tell you about 3 specific techniques for improving long-term retention of information. The first one is, we all probably already have this. It's about testing, right? We know that we should be testing. We know that we should produce training programs that actually have tests and milestones so someone can actually recall to mind very important points. This is kind of I already know this. Keep doing that. You want to keep doing that, and you want to incorporate those types of tests. As an example, in our training programs, in each of the modules that we have in an 8-hour on-demand training, we've got at least 8 tests. And those tests generally, the questions range from anywhere between 5 to 15 questions. That's that range. Number 2, it's called the spacing effect. Now, the spacing effect is really taking learning and spreading it out over the course of time. And research shows that spacing effect, people can remember about 80% of the information after 60 days. So this is called the spacing effect. And if you think about this, how many months are your children enrolled into a college course? Generally, 3 to 4 months. Why? Because this is part of the spacing effect. People learn based upon over the course of time. And so this is one of the things you want to be thinking about is most sales leaders, I want results right now. That's what you're hearing from your sales leaders that you're working with, or maybe you're a sales leader yourself. You want results right now. Well, yes, Mr. Sales Leader or Mrs. Sales Leader, but you should have thought about that 2 years ago when we were telling you about these things and having you to change the way we getting ready for the future. But guess what? We're not there. So I can't make magic just happen. What I can do, though, is I can create behavior change. And it's approximately, Mr. or Mrs. Sales Leader, it's going to take 2 to 3 months. And that's the type of messaging that you're going to want to give back. I can't wait. You should have thought about that earlier. But unfortunately, here we are, and this is the situation. That's what you want to be talking about. Now, that's called the spacing effect. And then there's called the chunking technique. And that's taking the sales training material and putting into the smaller pieces, generally less than 7 phases, if you would, or pieces, and then categorizing them in chunks so that can help the brain to encode and remember that information. Now, what do I mean by that? I'm going to show you Vengreso's 6 phases to transforming into a modern seller. Now, this is our social selling training program. Now, our enterprise program, which is generally for 25 salespeople and above, that enterprise program lasts approximately 12 weeks of learning, and then there's an award ceremony that with a buffer in between that follows the whole program. Okay, and we take that content, which is approximately 8 hours of on-demand, and then we put in live virtual training, which is the hands-on practical with coaching. And I've got a slide on that in a second, so if you didn't take notes, don't worry, I'll show you what it looks like. We took all of that data, which is about 20 hours worth of training content to change behavior, and we put that over the course of 12 weeks, and we break it down into 6 phases. Very easy for a seller to understand where they're at and remember and retain the memory. First, we go through what's called mindset. We need you, as a seller, to understand that this is a problem that I need to personally solve for. And then we look at branding. Now we go through and we say, okay, now we're going to rebrand who you are, what your messaging says on, in this case, LinkedIn, because you're going to be selling with social networks, what your branding looks like. We're going to provide you all the right messaging. You're going to take your profile and you're going to convert it from a resume into a resource for buyers. That's the branding piece. We're on that for a couple of weeks. And then we go into, now that you've been made to look sexy online, now we're going to actually teach you how to find and engage, because the last thing that you want to have happen is actually that you start engaging and finding people through LinkedIn and your profile is not brought up to speed. So we go there first with the brand, and now we look at how to find and engage and how to properly engage with buyers. And then we go into, now that we've taught you how to find them and how to engage with them, you got to move it to a connection. And then how do you convert that connection into an actual conversation? And that's that phase 4. And so someone, by the way, has asked, what was the third item that I had on the last slide? It's called the chunking effect. Chunking, C-H-U-N-K-I-N-G, the chunking effect. And that's what I'm reviewing now, is we divide the content over 12 weeks to learners into a maximum of 7 segments. That's what you're going to be thinking of. We do it as 6, a maximum of 7. And what we do is, now, after we teach you how to connect and convert into a conversation, we now teach you on social networks how to feed that network with valuable content, how to do that one-to-one or one-to-many. And that's that process, this phase that we go through, and that we spent actually about 4 weeks on with our sellers. And then finally, we close with the last 2 weeks on what we call a cadence. Now you've learned all this stuff in mindset, branding, find, engage, connect, feed, and we put it together as part of a cadence. What do you do right now, daily, weekly, monthly? So this is that chunking effect that we were just talking about, combined with the spacing effect, and embedded inside there is the testing effect. And yes, this would be for any learner, B2B specifically, B2B sellers, that we take folks, our training program is for. So if you can think about this in your training, I want you to take a step back and say, all right, if I look at all of my training, what is the segments? If you have more than 7, it's too many. Now group them in categories of 1 to 7, actually more than 1, probably a couple to 7. Group them and then take them and train on that over the course of time and phase that approach out. And you got to keep the sales leaders at bay by telling them this is not the right way to train it, and just throw them into a room for 2, 3, 4, 5 days, right? It's too much. So let's talk about, let's do a poll here. And what I want to know from you is, on average, how long does your current virtual sales training course run? Is it a week, 1 to 4 weeks, 5 to 8, 8 plus, or I don't have one yet? So we're going to throw that poll up right now. And I want you to answer that for your specific virtual sales training program that you've got, and use it for the current one. Don't take into consideration what I just told you, but use it for the current one. All right. So some of you are at that 1 week, about 12%. 1 to 4 weeks is about 20%. 5 to 8 is about 20%. And 8 weeks plus is about 15, and 35% don't have one. Let's end that poll, and we can broadcast the results. So it's very interesting, team, when you look at this, is most of you are sitting in the less than 8 weeks category, majority of you. And so if you want to create better behavior change, you want to be thinking about all the things I said in terms of spacing effect and chunking effect. Now, I will also say, we, Vengreso, have a selling with video sales training program, and that lasts 8 weeks. Now, I just told you all this information about 2 to 3 months, right? That lasts 8 weeks. That's the bare minimum right there, 2 months to 8 weeks. So you're not too far off the mark if you're sitting at about 8 weeks, but you want to be thinking about over the course of time and how to do that. and look at that as an enablement program. Let's move on to the next slide. And we're going to talk a little bit about the 7 benefits, and I'll break this down, of virtual instructor-led training. And then we'll get to some Q&A in just a moment here because I see some good questions coming in. There's really 7 things that you should be thinking about. You get to gamify the whole program. Inside of an instructor-led training program, in-person, traditional sales training, as you heard me call it earlier, it's a little difficult to be able to gamify a program. But when done through virtual, you can absolutely gamify the whole entire program. We just talked about chunking and spacing. So you can absolutely implement this chunking and spacing effect into your program and create better results. Number 3, which we'll spend some time on as well, is we want to promote deliberate practice. So you learn something, as I showed you those 6 phases of how Vengreso does it. In each one of those phases, we are doing on-demand, then live hands-on practical, then reinforced coaching. And so if you don't allow the sellers to accelerate the learning, if you time it, if you hold them back, then you will be able to promote deliberate practice of not just sitting there and I'm just going to watch this just for the sake of getting it done so I can check the box and my sales manager gets off my back. No, you're going to force them deliberate practice because they cannot move forward. So I really want you to think about that in terms of the programs that you use is time it, stop it so that they cannot progress faster than where the rest of the organization is at. Number 4, one of the benefits is it certainly helped to apply retention of learning and remembering. And this way, you as a sales enablement leader, enablement professional, a sales coach, you're not sitting there trying to be like, oh my God, we reviewed this already like 25 times. Why don't you remember that? It helps to reduce that type of stress, especially. Incorporate video. And you've got to learn how to be great on video. And if you're not great, don't worry. Many people aren't. Hire the person that is. Bring that individual into your training. Bring the life. You want to blow life into your training because nobody loves a boring online talking head or a voiceover on a PowerPoint. Nobody likes that, right? So there are some downsides too. Test the knowledge as we talked about earlier, and then definitely incorporate personal coaching. Definitely incorporate that. And we're going to talk about that right here. So you want our formula. This is our formula on our Selling with LinkedIn training program and our Selling with Video sales training program. So when we talk about modern selling, all we care and focus on from a Vengreso standpoint is teaching sellers how to create more sales conversations, more meetings. That's what we care about. And we have 2 programs that help support that. And how we do this is very much mirrored to the university style blended learning program. First week, so remember I showed you the phases. We have 6 phases, yeah? So I showed you those 6 phases. So when we look at phase 1 as an example, and the same applies for phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, etc. When you look at these for each phase, we're going to look at phase number 1. We go week number 1. It's all about on demand. This is the textbook, right? So you got a textbook. You get your textbook. Before you show up to classroom, you do some homework, you do some reading, you do preparation. This is that self-paced learning. So that's really all about phase 1. Week number 1 of phase 1. Now, we go to week number 2 for phase 1, which in our case, this phase number 1 was mindset. And now we do a live virtual classroom hands-on, right? This is the hands-on. So we're actually going to take major learning elements from the textbook. We're going to bring them to life and actually make you do, because there's something about sellers going through an on-demand textbook that they actually don't do. They really don't do the work. They listen, but now we're going to make you do the work inside the virtual classroom. So we actually have hands-on activities. We showcase individuals' work. We bring up their profiles. We bring up their scripts. We bring up their messages, those types of things, so we can actually see that. And in the same week, so we train on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. If you train on Tuesday, on Thursday, you're in coaching. If you train on Wednesday, on Friday, you're in coaching. And then on the coaching side, we launch what's called virtual office hours. Now, if you remember back in college days, in our old college days, when we went to college, we would read our book, we'd go to lecture, which is that live virtual classroom. And if we were smart or needed extra help, we would go to office hours with the professor or the GSI, graduate student instructor. And so that's the same model that you would want to be thinking about as a three-prong approach to your training program. Bring in the self-paced learning, the textbook, live hands-on practical that's required for everyone. Doesn't matter. You're required to attend. And then the optional piece is the virtual office hours. Some people don't need it. There are some people in college that just got it and they didn't need to go there. But for the rest of everybody else, then you're going through the optional coaching. Now, coaching, I see some questions about practice. Where do you practice at? In the virtual classroom. That is where you are practicing at. And most of our virtual training, about if you look at the 1 hour virtual training, about 35, 40 minutes is really spent on the live hands-on practical, and maybe another 20 minutes or so is some new information that you otherwise didn't get inside the textbook. So think about how you split that up with a lot of activities inside of the hands-on virtual training. And you practice there, and then you continue practicing inside of the coaching. And the best part is if you take this and you chunk it, the way I just described, phase 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, if you chunk it and you space it out, what happens is now they're focused just on this piece of the pie, phase 1. And now they have to go apply it, they have to go do it, they have to go practice it, and they can go back out into the field and go practice that one individual element. And then you come, and the third week is now the beginning of phase number 2, and you do it all over again. On-demand textbook, live virtual classroom, and live virtual office hours. So this is what we have mirrored our programs at, and the retention rate is amazing. The application is amazing. The success is amazing, and our clients have been truly happy. I will say this: the number one complaint that we get from a sales process standpoint, which you can apply internally, is sales leaders saying, 3 months? Are you kidding me? That's too long. Right. So do you want results or do you not want results? You answer that question, Mr. or Mrs. Customer. 2 months? That's too long. I need change right now. Right. Well, we should have thought about that 2 years ago, but we didn't. So here we are now, Mr. or Mrs. VP of Sales, and we're going to make change, and it's going to take at least 2 months to be able to change behavior and to get this going. So let's not waste time. That is what we talk about with our specific customers, and I think those are some talk tracks that you should also be thinking about as well. Okay. And so if you think about all of that we've done, does it actually work? I've given you some social proof and customer information about what our stats, but also behind this is what I'm very excited about is, if you may have heard of the Stevie Awards. It's kind of like the VMAs, the Grammys, but for business. For Vengreso, not only did we win Best Sales Training Product of the Year in 2019, but we also won it again in 2020. And it was because world-renowned leaders are looking at our program and have nominated and voted on our training program that says, yes, it works. Now, in 2019, we took what we call our 10-step implementation process. And I don't know if that's, you can actually go to vengreso.com, and I'm sure Bernie will put vengreso.com in the chat. And if you mouse over solutions, the very first thing says 10-step to digital selling under solutions. If you literally go there, you'll read our 10 steps of what we do in the implementation process. And if you're going to do this on your own, whatever the training is, go and look at how we put it together. We've given you our blueprint. It's there. And then what we do is we now go into the training program, and that is what we won the award for the 2020. So we won the award for the implementation of our training program as well as for the actual training effect. So I feel like we know what we're talking about. So any case, let's move on to Q&A. And I've got a lot of questions that are inside here. I see some questions from Mike. Mike asks, does reading the data information first, then live training work best? I'm more familiar with live than reading for reinforcement. So I'm not going to answer that from a scientific standpoint, okay? there's some research that's out there that will probably tell you exactly what it is that I'm going to say. I'm going to tell you from a practical standpoint. And if you look at this from the answer of, I want sellers coming prepared to apply. So if that is the goal, to come prepared to apply and to force them into the hands-on practical, then yes, you'll want to have them read first, or in this case, watch online and do, right? And learn that, and then come ready to apply. So that's our philosophy and how we approach training. I'm sure there's probably some use cases that you can probably think otherwise for. Another question, hopefully that answers that question there. Let's see, I'm trying to figure out which questions are answered and which questions are not.
I can help you with that.
Perfect, thank you.
Good. And Charity just asked this. So we'll work this in right now. Is there a specific platform you would recommend on delivering the training to our teams?
So if you're going to build this internally, again, remember I said we invested 3,932 hours. That was including standing up a platform. And getting it all prepped and ready to go. And it did not include standing up our support resources for our customers. It's a lot of work. I don't have one particular platform provider that you could turn to. There are hundreds of learning management platforms that are out there. What I would say is, if you're looking for one for an internal, well, first off, the fastest way to deploy is go to an outside organization and look to have them deploy. That's the first question, Charity, that I would do. And it's going to be the fastest and easiest way for you to get up and running, especially if you have a sales leader that's saying, I need it right now, okay? Next is, if it's your job to actually deploy something and you're going to build it internally, at a minimum, you want to make sure that the learning management provider has integration into direct integration into your Adobe Connect, your Zoom, your GoToMeeting, because here's what you want to track. Most organizations that build these programs are tracking whether or not you did the on-demand. Cool, but that's only 1/3 of the pie. What you need to track is did these people show up to the live virtual training? And in our case, we have Zoom specifically integrated into our learning platform so that if you click on the meeting, it shows that you attended in the learning platform. And when we post the video, the recording, you can actually skip over. But if you did not attend by clicking on that link, guess what? You don't get past first base. You've got to go and watch that 1-hour recording, and you've got to do. So I would probably say that as well. And then, of course, if you're looking at SCORM compliance or XAPI packaging, so you can move your packages from one place to another, certainly do that. I would not build my learning on a platform that is native to the platform. I just simply wouldn't do that, because you may want to switch providers one day down the road. All right, another question.
Great answer, Mario. Sonia over in Portland asked, what about problem-solving techniques? Is that important to include in a sales training program?
I guess the answer to that question is depends. Problem-solving. So that's really where you're going to get a lot of the benefit of coaching, right? So our students, when they come into our program, we are going to, we have a couple things, and actually this goes back to Charity's question as well. So it's actually a twofer here. Here's a twofer. One of the things that we have built into our learning management platform is what's called a discussion forum, and a module or a section called Ask the Expert. So the discussion forum will allow users to be able to say, I've got a problem. I'm not able to get a response back on my in-mails on LinkedIn, my connection requests. So they'll come onto the discussion forum in one of our 9 sections that we've got, and they can post a question, and then one of our experts will say, give us your script. What are you saying? Give us the background, show a video, and then we'll review it. We'll give them answer back, and we'll give them some coaching. There's that portion that you want to have into your learning management platform, in my opinion, so that you can have one repository for people to collaborate and ask questions and learn from each other. That's super important, because what works in the field here might work over here. And then for problem solving, you want to really drive those individuals to the coaching. Now, I said earlier that coaching is optional, right? Coaching is optional. But here's what you do inside of training. You ready for the secret tip? Here's the secret tip of how we go about doing this. Inside of the live training, every live training that we do, we drop a nugget or two of a topic that we're going to cover that is brand new, that was not covered in on-demand, that was not covered in the live training, and we say, you want to know how to secret ninja sauce to be able to do blah, 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 blah? Get to coaching. In coaching, the coach is actually going to take all your questions and also is going to talk to you about blah, 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 whatever it might be. So those are some really good ways to be able to incorporate problem solving is through a discussion forum, let reps learn from each other and get them into coaching. So that was a charity, and I forget who asked the other question, but hopefully that answered it.
Thank you very much, Bernie. Great answer, too. Actually, does this approach to sales training work better in certain industries than others?
Oh, that's a really good question. So from Vengreso standpoint, we've trained everything from telecom to insurance to technology, professional services, healthcare, and every other possible industry. And the answer is it all works the same across industry. So we haven't seen one over the other. Now, there may be nuances that I can't speak to yet. I can't say unequivocally the answer is yes, because there may be nuances that I'm not thinking of that you may have a specific application for. But generally, I would say the answer is yes.
All right. Great. And how do you convince sales leaders to invest in virtual training the last 3 months?
Very easy. You take the information that I showed you and say, do you want to create change? Because if you don't want to create change, well, it's going to be you that's on the line answering to the CEO of why you invested all this money without actually creating behavior change. Simple as that. Comes down to a personal name, personal stake, and we do get that in our sales process. If we're selling to somebody, again, we have 2 programs, one that's 2 months and one that's 3 months. The stats don't lie. The stats speak for themselves in terms of what has happened from our results. And sales leaders are notorious. I want it right now. I need to have it right now. Right now. Like it. But you got to go back to Rome wasn't built in a day. So if you're trying to make an impact, stop talking about what you need to do right now. Start thinking about what you need to do to future-proof your organization for the next year. Because Mr. or Mrs. Sales VP, you didn't do it last year and you didn't do it the year before. So it's time to step up to the plate and do it right. That's really, and I think also I come from, when the sales team engages me, I come from having sat in the seat, and I have the authority, me personally, to be able to say that. So if you don't feel like you have the authority to do something like that, then you're going to bring your outside training organization in who will, or you're going to go and really get your champion, someone in the sales organization, a sales leadership, who's going to say, no, boss, no, this is the way we have to do it in order for us to be able to create change.
That's great. I completely agree, Mario. How do you measure how do you measure results from virtual sales training?
Well, it depends on what you're trying to fix. So in our case, so I'll tell you what, in our case very specifically, when we are working with customers, it is all around one of 2 things. It's either the increase in the number of sales conversations or meetings that reps are having. And what we find is that 6 to 7 out of 10 of our customers don't actually require their sellers to track meetings, which is, it's beyond me that even happens, but I am not that leader. All of our sellers absolutely track their meetings because that's the measurement of success. I don't care how you got the appointment. I don't care if you did LinkedIn, video, phone, cold call, email. What I care about is what were the results. So for us, it's one of 2 ways. Either you're going to track the number of meetings and did that increase, or there's a brand new article that's coming out that I am authoring right now, and actually Bernie and I are actually authoring this together. I can't take all the credit, to be totally honest. And it's called the Sales Tools ROI. And most of us usually give a tool. We give like a SalesLoft or an outreach type of tool, a video sales acceleration tool like Vidyard or OneMob, or any of these other tools and technologies. We throw it at our customer, which is the internal salesperson. And let me just say this. A fool with a tool is still a fool. So if you want to measure its success, I would say subscribe to our Vengreso blog. I think it's going to be publishing, if I'm not mistaken, next week, Thursday, or at the very latest the week afterwards. And that article will help you, give you very specific tactics of what you can implement inside your CRM that's tried and true. And if you want to know how I was able to prove 100% rep adoption, and 100% of our reps were able to contribute to the open sales pipeline or close won, close loss, which landed me that opportunity to speak at LinkedIn, which catapulted my brand and career in creating the world's largest modern sales training company. It was because of what I did inside the CRM to track. So look for that article and go ahead and subscribe to the blog there, and you'll get it next week or in the week after.
Okay, Bernie. Gary Sidoti, pardon me if I mispronounce it, asks this: does your company work with other people's content to develop our program, our being your clients, I guess?
That's a really good question, Gary. Thank you for asking that question. And to date, no, we do not do that. It actually has come up quite a bit in the last 60 days as a result of COVID-19. We've never engaged on the aspect, and frankly, I don't even know how I would price it if I did. But we haven't done it. If it's large enough, I might look at it. But that having been said, I know that there's a couple of folks. If you want to reach out to me individually, I can certainly introduce you to some folks that might be able to help you that are on the mid-size, small size, or individual consultants. So feel free to reach out to me, and I can help you with that. But what I would say is my best advice is when I sat in the seat, yes, we could build it. We probably could. But you know what? If you look at just our social selling and selling with video sales training program, almost 4,000 hours just on one product alone. Are you going to put that much time in? Got to ask yourself that question. I would rather outsource it.
Yep, exactly. Hey, speaking of video, is video for sellers now more important because of the COVID pandemic?
So, look, I spent 2017, 18, and 19, and approximately went 75% of my meetings with executive leaders out of 200. I had over 200 executive meetings. Were spent 75% of them convincing sales leaders of this thing called the internet in 2017, 70% of my meetings in 2018, 60% of my meetings in 2019. Gary, I'll let you take a wild guess at whether or not today, right now, I'm trying to convince leaders to use this thing called digital or the internet with their sellers. No longer is that the conversation. You will become completely obsolete and you will be dead in your job, in your role, in less than 60 more days if you are not equipping your sellers to use digital, which includes video. And in fact, a study just came out from Zant.ai, an infographic today that showed that the number of the call, when you making cold calls, has slightly dipped. Emails dramatically dipped in terms of responses from buyers. What has gone up? Video. What has gone up? Text. What has gone up? A 54% increase on platforms like LinkedIn. So look, if you're not utilizing these platforms, you're going to be obsolete. Sales enablement or sales leader, you will be obsolete in less than 60 days. And I'm not going to say I told you so, because I did.
Well, I'll tell you, Mario, as you know, I work with a community of 158,000 trainers. And in that industry, we've seen a huge shift in resistance to informal video and to digital in general over the last 3 years. And while there was a lot of resistance, maybe about 90% of them resisting things like informal video from your phone to help in training, now it's flipped. And there are just a very few people left who are resisting that change. I got a couple of more questions for you, and it just seems to be about the right amount of time here, Bernie. Before I give them to you, I want to remind everybody that just below the chat there, you can see you can download two things. One is the PDF of the slides. That is the document called Sales Training in the Age of COVID-19. And above that, there's another job aid there, the Top 100 Sales Enablement Best Practices. Bernie, before I give you this last question, do you want to mention that at all?
Yeah, Mario, the salsa dance is coming one day. For those of you that asked about the salsa dance, who know about that. The top 100 sales enablement best practices was we pulled over 100 sales enablement leaders, and we created a book on the top 100 sales enablement best practices. There's some great insights into things that you should be thinking about and what you should be doing. For creating a better sales environment and better sales organization. So encourage you to download it, have fun with it, and we also have a new one that's forthcoming for sales leaders. So if you want to have that for your sales leadership and you want to get them some exposure and some brand exposure to be featured in our top 100 sales leader, reach out to us and we'll get you that for your sales leader as well. That'll probably get you a nice positioning with your sales leader.
Wow, Mario, we've got a quarterly webinar series coming up that we're doing with you. I hope we can bake some of that into that series.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be good.
Good. I have one more question for you here, and I'm also going to help everybody get to the Vengreso page because there are resources there that you've mentioned. So we'll do that. Don't worry, folks. If that covered up what you were looking at, you can just minimize that and look at it in a little bit. Here's the last question I'll give you. Our sellers are 30% millennial and 70% boomers. Is that mix going to work in virtual sales training?
Even better. Yes, 100%. Whoever asked that question, if you have a boomer type environment or even a Gen X type environment, the description of how I showcase to you will absolutely work, and that is one of the best arrangements for the Gen X and the boomers. And what I will say, millennials have struggled a little bit in terms of the virtual training program that I just described to you because they want everything right now, and they want to be able to move ahead, and they're not potentially as slow from a technology standpoint with their boomer friends, but nonetheless, that is if you slow them down, it forces them to apply. Oftentimes, we see a lot in millennials. Millennials think they know what to do. They say they know what to do. But the reality is they're not applying, which is the same problem that boomers have, same problem Gen X has, and every other gen that's out there. So make them apply.
And especially people in sales in general. We want to get to the bottom line, right? All right. Well, thank you so much, Mario. This has been a really great session, one of our best, I think, in quite a while. So we're looking forward to when you return for the upcoming series. And any final words you want to leave us with?
Yeah, I would say I'm a big champion. I've sat on both sides of the house, both on the consulting side for the last 4 years and on the 18 years as a leader and as a producer. So what I'd say is I've been through a lot of sales training programs, and when we designed our program, we knew what we didn't want and we knew what we wanted. So look for take the time to go and find that the training providers for whatever the business need that you're trying to solve for your sales team, and go there first before you try to build it yourself. I promise you that someone's personality, like myself, who's trained in this and who does this every day, will probably work best in your sales environment than someone who doesn't do it every day. So that's my best advice to you is to go and look outside before you try to build it yourself.
All right. Well, thank you again, Mario. Glad to have you here. Looking forward to your return. And thanks to you and Bernie and everybody at Vengreso for making this session possible. So we encourage everybody to go to vengreso.com and also to follow Vengreso on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter.
That's right. I'm sorry. That's what was my cue to turn those slides. I forgot to cue that up. And I want to close with thank you so much, Gary, for having us at SMM Connect. It's been a great partnership with SMM Connect, so thank you for having us.
Right. Well, thanks very much, everybody who attended today, and all those of you who watched the recording too. We look forward to seeing you again. Everybody, take care, wash your hands, and stay well. And we'll look for happy selling to everybody.